When it comes to Starfleet legends, these OG captains set the gold standard. They faced wars, first contacts, moral dilemmas, and the occasional time loop, all while defining what it means to lead. From Kirk's bold instincts to Picard's diplomatic finesse, to Sisko's grit, Janeway's resilience, and Archer's pioneering spirit, each brought something different to the captain's chair. In this livestream, we put them side by side to compare strengths, flaws, and the unforgettable moments. The question is, who would you follow into the unknown? Hello and welcome to the Savage Stream, the weekly live stream where we talk all things sci-fi. And today we are going to be talking about the best captains in Starfleet, part 1. And as always, there are timestamps below so you can skip ahead at any time. But before we get started with our very first captain, I want to welcome some special guests to the stage. Now, our first special guest is the host of the weekly live stream on YouTube called Buffer Time, and also runs the Best of Trek, Worst of Trek YouTube channel. Welcome to the show, Dustin.
Hello, greetings. Thank you for having me.
I know there's like a big lag, but I don't know how long the lag is. So that's going to be a little bit of fun too during this live stream. I would love to welcome up our second special guest, who is a longtime listener of the TNG podcast and making her second appearance on the Savage Stream. Welcome to the show, Nadia.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
I am super excited. And hello, everyone who's watching live. Hello, everyone on the replay. I'm super excited to jump into this. Now, I wanted Dustin and Nadia to be here because you guys know I'm not up on all the captains, and I really want to get a fair kind of understanding of everybody. I don't want to be really skewed, and then, you know, y'all already know who I'm going to pick for my favorite. So I really want to be fair, and I want to hear about all of the captains, at least the first half. We'll do part 2 next week. And then I definitely want to hear from you. So if you have a captain that you love, let me know in the comments. Let me know in the chat. Now, let's start with our very first. I love this in the chat. It's like, oh, that's what Nadia looks like. I know, isn't she pretty? And she's got her hair blowing in the breeze. Dustin's pretty also.
Sorry, guys. No, very limited air conditioning up here. So sorry, have to have the fan blowing.
No, I totally hear you on that. Okay, so our first captain is Captain Kirk. First, I want to hear from you two. What are your thoughts on him as a captain in general?
Well, Dustin, you can go first. It's fine.
I'm pretty neutral on Kirk. I think he's fun to watch most of the time. I don't think he's always the most effective captain because he's so gung-ho. But he's definitely up there.
Nadia?
I like Kirk. I think he's hilarious, and a lot of it is just in Shatner's delivery, you know, just the way he talks with the sabotage. So I enjoy him. He's not my favorite, but I enjoy him.
The thing about Shatner too is I wonder, you just said that Shatner's really hilarious, and do you think that was on purpose? Like, do you think it was meant to be a funny character, or do you think his style of acting is what made it really funny, like because it's so big?
Well, I think that the actor himself is from Montreal, so he was bringing his Montreal or his Quebecois up into the mix. It's a very interesting people up here. No, jokes aside, I think that was just his interpretation. You know, I can't. If you compare to maybe like Pike in the pilot, to me just seemed kind of a little bit bland, you know. I think maybe they wanted Kirk to be a little bit more interesting, and this is just conjecture. I didn't, you know, read the Star Trek Bible or anything like that. Yeah, I think he was just. I think it was probably part in the way he was written and conceived of, and probably partly just his own way of delivering it, like actors' choices.
So some of the things that I thought might be, so I'm asking because I haven't, you know, watched a ton of TOS, which is so funny because today, as I was pulling clips for this conversation, I realized, I already knew this, but I realized again, there's only 3 seasons of TOS. And I'm like, there's only like 30 episodes of this show or something. And I'm just like, why haven't I watched
seasons? Season 1 is 30 episodes by
How
itself.
much is the next season? Yeah, but aren't they all about 30? Okay. But TNG is about 26 each one. And in my mind, I had made it like TOS is like watching Deep Space Nine, because y'all know I've been dragging my feet on that also. And I'm like, man, I got 7 seasons of TOS and 7 seasons of DS9. And I was like, wait, there's like, oh yeah, not 30 episodes. Sorry, there's 3 seasons, but there's only 3 seasons. I recently caught up on like 6 seasons of Doctor Who. So like, I could have watched this show a million times over by now. So anyways, that was just something as an aside.
You know what throws me off is the whole 5-year mission. So I always like automatically think that there's 5 seasons. And then I'm like, oh wait, not quite.
Do you think
technically there is, because that's the animated series takes off from there, so you get another season and a half. So technically that's 2 more seasons and 5-year mission almost.
No, what you just said was a season and a half. And I can math a little bit. That's 4.5 seasons. 4.5 years.
If you can even call the second season's only 6 episodes, so it's kind of a cop out to call it a season by itself at all.
So let's talk about some characteristics that I pulled together. Me and my buddy ChatGPT pulled together some characteristics for what would make a really good captain. And I think Chat came up with like 30, and I narrowed it down a little bit. So here are some things that I thought would make a good captain. And I feel like all the captains we're going to talk about today have different strengths and weaknesses on this list. I don't know if any of them hit all of them like 100%. Of the captains I'm familiar with, I would say no, because then they'd be like the perfect person. But we've got strategy, diplomacy, courage, their respect of life, and the way that they do or do not protect their crew. Where do you guys think Kirk ranks on these? Like, where would be his special strength?
I think I would put him as protective of his crew and courageous. I think that those are his strengths. What, you're pointing downward? Did I not?
That's me agreeing with you.
Oh.
It's like, yeah.
How is this agreeing? How about this? Like, this is kind of universal. Although in some countries it's offensive, but most of the world, I've been all over the place, and they use a lot of this.
He's pointing, saying like, yeah, what she said, but yeah, that's another way.
Oh, I was like, what did I do? I must have not unmuted myself. Sorry, I haven't done this in a while. Bear with me.
No, you basically just said everything I was going to say. Diplomat, or respectful of, or protective of crew, and courageous. Because he's got plot armor a mile thick. Michael Burnham's the only other captain to try and hit his level of plot armor. So he gets to just go head on into everything, and he knows it'll be fine. There is no-win scenario. Where no matter what the stakes are, no matter how unbelievable, the character always makes it out on top.
Okay. Robert says, I think he treated the Enterprise better than he treated the crew. What do you guys think about that? Like the ship. He treated the ship better than the crew.
I don't know. I'm sure a lot of the ladies on the crew thought that he treated them just fine. Sorry, couldn't help it.
So I made this video kind of joking about how Kirk is the ladies' man or whatever. It was a video with all the captains sitting around giving advice. And Kirk's advice was like, have you tried sleeping with them? Right. And it was like, ha, ha, ha. And then somebody was in the comments and they were like, that's not Kirk at all. That's totally not him. He's so strategic. He would have all these plans. And I was like, okay, what do you guys think about that?
No, Kirk just wings it minute to minute, and he's like MacGyver. He's always got what the situation needs, no matter how ridiculous or out of the ordinary.
Another Canadian actor. Sorry, I had to put that in there.
We've got Mr. Captain saying, ultimately, Kirk is Kirk. Yeah. We've got Chazzy putting in a vote for Benjamin Sisko and Pale Moonlight, which we'll get to Sisko in 2 more captains. Robert loved the animated series, which is fine. Like, I haven't seen it. I saw the Orion episode just to see, like, because I was watching Lower Decks and I was like, why are they blue? And they were like, well, duh, from the animated. So then I watched that. But like, yeah, I didn't watch all of it. So, and that's
all of Trek. There's a couple of episodes totally worth watching through. And a whole lot that's it's a slog to get through. Uhura's best episode is probably the Lorelei signal in that. If you haven't seen that, I can't recommend it enough.
I have not seen that. Thank you for the recommendation, so I don't have to watch all of it.
I don't remember it.
I love that they did an animated series, though. I think that's kind of fun.
Chazzy
says, you forgot that Kirk had Riz. Yes, I think that was to Nadia's point of all the ladies felt very cared for. They had lots of shore leave. Is that true? Did they have a lot of shore leave? Because on TNG, they had it's like Risa was the only place they could go and only one at a time.
Well, literally, the episode Shore Leave is season 1, episode 15, so... I'm always like...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
How long have they been in space that they already need? Because they say in the beginning, like, oh, we desperately need the shore leave. And yeah, anyway.
And, I don't know if you guys remember this, but in Enterprise, I want to say in season 1, but I'm not as up to date on Enterprise as I am on TNG and so on. They talked about taking shore leave on Risa for I think 3 or 4 episodes before they actually finally got there. And even then it was I think I actually called it 2 days, 2 nights or something. So they didn't even get to stay very long. So yeah, Risa seems to be the place, but I guess you can't go there for tremendously long. Maybe it's too much Dramaharon.
Yeah, I mean, look at what happened to Riker. He came back with an infection for the entire crew. So maybe 2 days and 2 nights is enough.
Literally nobody that ever goes to Risa on screen has a good time. I mean, something always happens where part of it is a good time for them, but also Hoshi is the only person. So there's a good piece of Enterprise. That's probably the best outcome of that episode in Enterprise. Hoshi has a good time on Risa. Otherwise, the DS9 one, nope. Everybody that goes, except for, maybe Bashir, has a bad time.
Yeah.
I think Picard had fun with Vosh. I think he was actually having a bad time
Deep down
when he was just reading a book, because he didn't seem very relaxed or like he was having fun. Granted, all the waitresses kept coming up and offering Jamaharon, but he just didn't seem like he was fully embracing the Risa experience. But he seemed to have a lot of fun doing Indiana Jones with Vosh, because at the end he was smiling and refreshed and let's get back to work. So I think that abduction and all of that actually was his good time.
Well, I think he had a few stress relieving activities while he was there. So at the end of his trip, yeah, he'd be relaxed and things like that. But look, I feel like I need to set some ground rules when it comes to the discussions of the women in Picard's life, because as you all know, I'm the only woman for him. Stupid Vosh. And Vash in French means cow, so there.
Oh no, I don't think that's what they were going for though.
Sucks to be them. That's what happened.
I was like, it must mean something better in some other language. Okay.
Every time he says Vash, I'm so happy.
Would you guys serve under Kirk?
Mostly, I just don't want to serve in the 2260s, but I mean, if this is a I have to versus some of the other captains on this list, no, he wouldn't be my first choice to serve under.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I think your point about serving at that particular point in time, generally speaking, is a really good one. But yeah, Kirk, I think that logically speaking, if I was to really try to put myself in that situation, just picture myself, I think that being out in space and you're far from home and things like that, I think I would want somebody who is just maybe a tad more predictable. So if I know who my other choices are in terms of captains, then I would probably pick somebody else just because he's a little bit maybe too much of a cowboy for my sensibility. So it's fun to watch him on the screen, but in real life, theoretically, I don't know how comfortable I would be.
So DJ Magic says Kirk got 46 people killed in the first 10 episodes. And then Chazzy says, I would serve under Kirk if I wasn't a red shirt.
That's
Oh, and I'm a minority, and so are you, Cherise. So
I
we should
know.
probably,
I'm not even answering this question.
I
Like,
know, for real. Let's just avoid
I
all
saw
TV
Space
until the
Need and
90s.
seeing her getting smacked around. I'm good. I'm
Mhm.
super good. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, no, I'm good. Mr. Captain says serve with TOS or with the movie version of Kirk. Just with the show version, with the TOS version.
But I think
because
that's a
that
good
really
point.
is two different questions.
Yeah.
I would serve under the movie Kirk before I would serve under the TOS era Kirk.
Wasn't the
Okay,
movie
I'm gonna
Kirk?
be like Dustin and go pointing at you.
Wasn't the movie Kirk an admiral already, or no?
He was and he wasn't.
Okay.
Part of them.
Okay. Robert says totally serve under Kirk because can break more rules. So who's the can in that sentence? You can break more rules serving under Kirk, or Kirk can break more rules? I need some clarification.
I think that I would assume that Robert means that he would their crew would be able to break more rules and get away with things because again, it's a whole cowboy type of
Yeah.
mentality.
The 2260s were a different era to like the 2360s.
Yeah.
So Robert clarified, I can. When Grace,
yes, you can.
When Grace says, compared to every other TOS captain we saw, I guess Kirk's fine. So I guess it does depend on who you're comparing to.
What about Sulu? You know, I mean, if we go way later in the canon, like what was it Star Trek 6? He was captain, or was it 5?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
6, yeah. So I mean, I think I would probably choose Sulu over Kirk, if only for the voice.
I know, right? So wonderful. And I want to shout out PS2 Chipper, who gifted 5 memberships to the channel. So if you're not a member and you want to grab a membership, now is definitely the time.
Yay, PS2 Chipper, my favorite.
I know. The OG, who's been here from like my first or second live stream ever. Like, only person in the chat other than me was PS2 Chipper. So yeah, Sulu was awesome. Oh my.
Oh
I love
my.
that. Oh my, Nadia. Robert says Janeway calls out how it was a wilder time during Kirk's era. Yeah, I mean, I feel like they each have their own. Well, let's go to the next captain because they each have their own environments that they're in and things that are acceptable and things that are not acceptable. On the one hand, it's just like the era in which they were filming the shows, but also the era in which like the space opera is taking place. And then like what Starfleet is and is not like, it definitely changes. Okay, so next on the list is Captain Picard. This one I'm very familiar with. Okay, so where do you guys think Captain Picard stands on some of these characteristics? His strategy, diplomacy, courage, respect for life, and his protectiveness of the crew. Is there any of these that he really stands out in as a captain?
All of the above, baby. No, seriously. It's like if you think of strategy, I find that he's pretty strategic. He does think ahead. We all know he's Starfleet's premier diplomat, you know. But he's gifted in that area. I think he's super brave. I mean, he's been through the ringer between the torture of the Borg and the Cardassians and things like that, and he's gone through hell and basically come out of it. And I think that it takes a lot of courage to do that. And I found that he was always very respectful of life in his approach, and that's kind of one of the things that like kind of stood out about Star Trek when I first started watching it. You know, that idea that all life is sacred and things like that. Even if it's little crystalline thingies that say that we're ugly bags of water or something like that. And I think he's pretty protective.
Water.
Yeah, ugly bags of mostly water. In terms of protective of the crew, I think he's protective, although family-wise, I think that comes a lot later.
Dustin?
Yeah, out of all of these, the last two are probably actually the weakest. Like, yeah, I want to say my first reaction is yes, he's great at all of these things, and he generally is versus the other captains that we're talking about. But protective, just the way protective of a crew is, uh, the description here. He doesn't treat the crew like a family. And that's one of the things that I always think about when it comes to the very end of all good things. And he goes and sits down at the poker game and he's like, I should have done this a long time ago. He did not treat even his best crew like family until then, and then it came. So yeah, that's all I can say is like what's not quite right on that list, because the rest he's just solid, and generally respectful of life. But then there's that episode with Nikolai and the people
Oh God.
that he had to save, and then Picard makes this, oh, it's the Prime Directive. What can you do? Well, you can do, and he chose not to, and
But I think that.
ding some
Oh,
points.
sorry. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were okay. So yeah. But to your point, yeah, he doesn't get more casual with the crew until the very end of the very last episode. Absolutely. But I think that actually shows some growth. Over 7 years, we want to see our characters be able to, develop and continue growing as human beings. So, and it's clear when in Picard that like, even though it had been a while since he'd seen them, he still just loved them and he was still mourning Data, and it was years and years later. So he clearly thought of them as family, even if he didn't necessarily act like it until the very end. And he definitely developed that over time. And I think that shows some strength.
Yeah, I would say Picard is amazing as a diplomat. Like that is his superpower. I think more than any other captain of ever. Like that's his thing. That's his secret sauce. And I love a good speech. I love a good Picard speech. Like you're going to hear some deep stuff, and it's going to be delivered really grandly, and it's going to make you think. So I think he really, really shines in that area. I think he also, yes, everything on the list, every captain has some pieces of everything on the list, right? Because that's how they became a captain. But I really think that that's his secret sauce. And I think, back to the respectful of life. Yes, there's that time when he does not follow the Prime Directive for no reason whatsoever. Like that was dumb. And then there's the time with Hugh, right? Where he was just like, airlock. He's like, let's turn him into a weapon, which Janeway also totally did. But even in that case, it was understandable because he had been assimilated. I think if it was any other species, he might have thought twice, but that was out of character for him to be so bloodthirsty, right? So I think a lot of times when there's a loss of life, it's not, except for that, it's not usually malice. It's usually really dumb, like the Prime Directive one with Nikolai, or it's some kind of, like when they were brain wiped in that one episode, and then they were like blowing up all those ships, and then he was like, oops, like their technology wasn't good enough for ours. Maybe this isn't true. It's kind of stuff where he wouldn't have done it if he was in his right mind. Okay, so now here's the question. Would you join his crew? Would you serve with Picard?
Yes.
Yes and no.
Because
yes,
you'd be
because
that's against the rules.
Exactly. Thank you. You know me so well now.
So, and you said yes, Dustin?
Just straight up yes. I don't need.
I was like,
I don't need any other reason. Nope, I don't. Just yes. Out of all of these captains that we're talking about today, I would serve under Picard before any of these others easily.
If Picard was a boss, like not a captain, but like a regular 9-to-5 job type boss, I would still want to be on his team. Like I would still want to be his employee, because I love the way he leads. Like I love the way that he, even if he's not as casual with his crew, and he's not as cuddly with them, he listens to them and he respects them. And that I think is incredible. Like when he's in a tough spot, he's like, options, thoughts.
Exactly. You and Andrea used to make that point a lot in the podcast, and I would be listening and be like, "Yes, right, girl, you're totally right." Because it is nice to see that. A lot of leaders just it's their way or the highway, and that's it. And there's a complete fixed mindset, and you can't get through to them. So having a boss who is a critical thinker and who is able to self-reflect, to admit if he's wrong, to looks to his team to provide him with options. I think that's fantastic. And having had that in life myself, and also having had the opposite, it's a very nice situation to be in.
100%. Like, that's because Andrea and I have had horrible bosses. And we've also had like a really amazing, we had one boss, one supervisor who was like Picard, and she's just like freaking amazing. We have a lot in the chat too with thoughts on Picard. So Robert says that Picard was diplomatic for sure because he was always telling Worf to chill with the phasers, which Worf was always quick to pick up a phaser. First it was Tasha, then it was Worf and Tasha, and then it was just Worf picking up those phasers.
Chazzy picked up a phaser on Nikolai.
That's his brother. Come on.
I don't care. I hate that guy so much. I mean, sorry.
Chazzy says he was morally rigid, and then he loosened up when he saw the injustices in the Federation, especially after the Romulus refugee crisis. I think the character was just written super stiff in all of season 1, like very, like when I think of him in season 7 and how he's such a good diplomat and such a great boss and all these things, I don't get any of the warm and fuzzies in season 1. He's just kind of grumpy. He's like a Scrooge on top of in charge of the ship. Mr. Captain says, so was Picard too preachy at times? I mean, even 7 kind of refers to that in Picard season 3 when Jack started talking about the different ships. So Picard was always one to give a good speech. And I think the speeches could definitely be seen as preachy, but like a real good sermon, because I loved his speeches. I was here for it. Every time he busted out one, I was like, I never felt like, oh my gosh, here he goes again. I was always like, yeah, good point. And I always wondered who wrote those speeches. Like, was there one person who that was their job? Like, we need a good speech here. Because that was very different from the typical dialogue of like, adjust the phasers, phase variant 3.25. You know what I mean? It's like a very different writing style. DJ Magic says that it seems like Picard got a little more Pike-ish later in life, meaning he no longer hesitates to blow up the ship when dealing with the Borg in Picard. I mean, maybe, I don't know. Picard in Picard is different from Picard in TNG. So there's that also. And then Mr. Captain says Picard's better in the movies. So like Picard in the movies is also different than Picard in TNG. That's interesting. Oh my gosh.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, certainly in the beginning, and yeah, there's some character development and things like that, but I didn't see a major difference in Picard in the movies versus, the latter half of TNG. I don't know. Dustin, what do you think?
I don't think TNG Picard at any point in his journey in there would have smashed the case of ships like in First Contact. So is there as much growth? Is he as different as movie Kirk is from TOS Kirk? No, he's less so, but there is a difference there.
But the whole smashing of the ship thing, though, I mean, I can understand that even as like a logical person. I mean, they were invading his mind basically. So, to have something kind of niggling at you all the time, and to have a moment where you feel helpless and you can't fight off this greater foe. Yeah, I could see him in a private situation, losing it for a second. So that didn't strike me as, weird. It struck me as a reaction that actually could be predicted a little bit.
Yeah, no, the reaction was totally appropriate. Like having a tantrum makes sense, but Picard having a tantrum on TNG is something we've never seen. They don't emote like that on the show. Do you remember when, I always bring this up, when Wesley and all the kids were kidnapped and all the parents were like, so we've all come today to talk about our missing children. You know what I mean? It was just, they don't emote. They're just like, or that episode, Eye of the Beholder, when that guy like jumps into the warp core and then Troy is talking to his fiance and it's been like 3 hours since the guy has died. And she's like, he was a great kid. Sure did like him. And you're like, what? They just don't, they don't emote like normal people would, which I feel like he had the space to do in First Contact, but he never did that. And even in the Brothers episode, when it was supposed to be his like recovery episode, it felt very restrained. Okay.
No way. He balled. He absolutely balled. He got into a fight with his brother, for God's sake. I mean, they were rolling on the ground.
I don't know how. I don't know. I don't know how much I thought that fight. I don't know. Do you remember that episode of The Simpsons where like Bart and Lisa are fighting and like one of them's just like holding the other one's head and they're just like swinging their arms? That's how I felt about this fight. I don't know if I really bought it. It just felt kind of like, I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. I did, but I mean, I got into a lot of fisticuffs with my sibling as well when I was younger. So maybe it's just the way that older people do it.
Yeah, that might be true. And let me know in the chat if you would serve under Captain Picard as well. I'm seeing a lot in the chat of just like yes, and yes, so I could ask Trey out, and yes, so I could say shut up, Wesley, and yes, so like there's a lot of good reasons. Let's talk about the next captain on the list, which is Captain Sisko. Okay, so of all of these things, where do you think Captain Sisko's superpower lies? Or again, is this one that just like across the board meets all the requirements?
Strategic and protective of crew. Those are his two strengths. Probably strategy above all else. His diplomacy, only okay. In his dealings in diplomacy, he only ever manages to thwart something or hold it off for longer, but never actually, gets any major treaty signed or gets, any major wins that don't end up coming back to bite him later.
Oh, that's a bummer.
I'd say diplomacy is actually his weakest. Obviously courageous, but respectful of life when he can, most of the time. Fiercely protective of his crew. I mean, the Dominion, and just in general, the Dominion War just haunts him as he looks at the casualty lists every week. So, strategic and protective of crew, absolutely.
Well, speaking of him looking at casualty lists and his diplomacy, and his diplomatic abilities, or lack thereof. I mean, look what he did in that episode. He basically lied, fabricated this whole situation so that the Romulans could get into the war. So, but not the most diplomatic of things, but certainly very strategic. I think like everybody would probably say that he's the most strategic captain, the one that you want in wartime. If not the one, then one of like the top two for sure. So
to be fair, though, your reference to In a Pale Moonlight, that's basically Garrick's plan. Bashir or Sisko just gets caught up in it. It's not even really his plan by that point. It's just Garrick leading him along.
Although ultimately, as the captain, the buck stops with him. So,
that's an interesting point, though, that you said he's, it was not the most diplomatic thing to do, but it was very strategic. Do either of you think that those two things are in conflict? That if you're going to be really good at strategy, that means you can't always do the diplomatic thing. Or if you're going to be super diplomatic about everything, you can't always be super strategic.
Unfortunately, human beings in wartime, don't necessarily behave the same way they would if they had a lot more stability happening. So I think your strategy in wartime might not necessarily be the most diplomatic thing. So yeah, they're not like mutually exclusive, but I think circumstances can definitely change the way you look at things. And he was so desperate at that point, looking at all of the different casualty lists and seeing his crew just in that completely tense state every day or every time the list was published. Yeah, I could understand why he went that direction.
Also, you said he's great in wartime, and I see all these comments as well that I'm gonna put on the screen in a second. But you also said he's a great captain at wartime. Do you think that, which also there wasn't a war when the show started, so his leadership style had to change over the seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
With how he became by the end, not like the very, very end, but how he became, let's say at the beginning of season 7, do you think he would have been, if we plucked him out and put him somewhere else, would he have been able to be a good captain out of wartime? I'm kind of thinking of Jellicoe and how I think he's the worst, but he was perfect for that situation. He was like the perfect person for that situation because he got the crew where they needed to be. He dropped the bombs and the warnings the way they needed to be dropped. He got Picard back. He was the right man for the job, even though I wouldn't want to work under him 24/7. Like I wouldn't want him to be my captain for more than that mission. but he was the right person for the job. So my question is for Sisko, since he's been changed into this wartime captain, do you think he would have been successful as a peacetime captain?
I think that he is adaptable. I think he had to figure out ways to adapt in life. Between Wolf 359 and the repercussions on his life, losing his wife, having to raise his child by himself, having to deal with all of that, and then he's eventually he goes from a very stable position at Utopia Planitia, and then he ends up on, basically, as Julian would say, the frontier. So I think that what's interesting is that because of the way that DS9 was structured, and it wasn't so episodic, so we actually could really see his character development over time. So yeah, he had to kind of adapt to the whole Cardassian melange, like the mix of the Cardassian issues with the station in the beginning, and try to get it up and running, and then strategically move next to the wormhole. But yeah, eventually, I think that he is adaptable enough to go from dealing with those kinds of problems to dealing with an actual existential crisis throughout the rest of the series.
He is the Sisko. He'll figure it out.
I
I think he was really fine as a commander for the first couple of seasons before he becomes a wartime captain. Do I think he was going to do great things in peacetime? I think he'll do Captain Carol Freeman level good things over time, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's another good point, is that what I love about like the crew on TNG is they're all supposed to be the best of the best. Although some of them you're like, really? But they're supposed to be the best of the best. And what I really loved about Lower Decks is like, what about everybody else? Because like not everybody can be the best of the best. So there is also this idea that they could be just fine. Like they could end up, all these people could be just fine captains. They don't have to be the best captain in the whole world to still be a good captain, which is interesting. I already put this up, but I'm going to put it up again. He punched Q. Who else can say that? I freaking love that scene. That scene just made me so happy. Like he's on the ground and he's like, Picard never hit me. And Sisko's like, I'm not Picard. And you're like, he's not. That was just like that's exactly what we needed in that scene. Robert says, Captain Sisko does what is necessary to get the job done. I'd only serve under the bearded version, though. When Grace says, Sisko is definitely one I would want coming if I needed rescue and I was important to him. Word on that. Or Janeway. I feel like she would save me also. I feel like Picard would be how sad. If he could save me, he would. But like, if it messed up some stuff, he might be like, prime directive.
Picard would come after me anytime I was in trouble. I know it. You can't break my faith.
Tell that to Lieutenant Darren on the freaking fire planet or whatever.
She was trifling anyway.
Sisko can/cannot live with Garrick's plan. Love the admission of ambiguity. PS2 Chipper says, a good captain, yes. A great captain, no. Which is interesting because I mentioned recently I've been watching a freaking crap ton of Doctor Who, and the 12th Doctor, I think, is always like, I don't know, he said something like, I'm a great doctor but not a good one. Like he's not a good person, but he's like good at what he does. I don't know, it's an interesting distinction. Mr. Captain says he has the crew over for home cooking, he takes them to baseball games, and he sings. His crew is his family.
Yeah, and his cooking is his love language.
Yeah, so to John's point, Deep Space Nine is early Star Trek. Yes, so what I've done is I've broken Star Trek up into like the first 5 captains. So that goes up to Enterprise, and then the second 5 captains. So that's like Picard, Lower Decks, Prodigy. So early Star Trek is anything in like the first 30 years. And then late is like the last 30 years or whatever. The prophets kept him in a wartime mentality. Oh, that's interesting. They were always putting him in some situations that kept him in that fight or flight mode. That's fair. Other things that Ben did that the others did not. He worked in a non-Federation space the whole season, and he had to navigate being an icon while staying true to the Federation. That's a good point. That's half of a good point.
He was a religious icon, yes, but Janeway, the entire show is not in Federation space, right?
Yes, that's true also.
Right.
And that's what makes both the shows a little bit different, because TNG was a little different because they were going, deeper into space or whatever. And then DS9 was like, we're not moving. We're just staying here, but we're not like close to all of our people. And then Voyager's like, we're really far away and we're trying to get home. And that was like the ways that they could actually tell stories that weren't the same story, which I'm really grateful for. Because I think even though we went into like Borgapalooza with all of Voyager, I'm just grateful that they had the opportunity to try some different storylines in these different situations.
Have either of you heard the theory that Sisko's actually the antagonist of DS9, and do you think it holds any weight?
Well, I haven't heard that.
Elaborate, please. Or wait, is this related to? I mean, I've heard people say that that the Federation had no business going into Dominion space, and in that way, the Federation were the bad guys in the war. But I haven't heard anything specifically about Sisko being an antagonist. So please do elaborate.
That Gul Dukat is actually the protagonist of DS9.
Oh, you need to explain this.
I don't really have an explanation. I'm just saying this is an actual fan theory. I don't buy any stock in it. I just thought I'd throw that out there and see if either of you had heard this one.
Okay, so I have not heard that. But what's interesting about what you just said is I think for the people who love DS9 and watch it like often, it might be fun to rewatch it with that mindset that Gul Dukat's the protagonist. Because I, like a few years ago, watched Battlestar Galactica for the first time. Amazing. I watched it with a bunch of friends. We did it 1 week at a time. It took us 2 years to finish the show, but it was amazing. And what I was advised to do is as soon as you finish the show, rewatch it from another character's perspective. So it was like, okay, we've all watched it, just going through blindly. Now rewatch it as this character, and you'll see that every single decision they made makes complete sense for that character. Now rewatch it as this other character. Every decision they made makes total sense. And when you flip your mind, you're like, what? Wait a minute, because it just changes the feel of the show. So I guess that would be my encouragement. I haven't heard that, but if you're a big DS9 fan, that might like make you enjoy the show even more to see it in a totally different way.
There's a couple of early interactions with Dukat that could actually make you buy it for just a minute. But I mean, as you get towards the end of DS9, it becomes abundantly clear. Dukat is not the good guy in any way, shape, or form. But Sisko is very antagonistic at times, even not just versus Dukat. So I think there's just a smidge of truth to that, but Dukat is not the hero of this story at all.
But Sisko is justifiably antagonistic, though. He doesn't just like go after someone just to go after them. People do wrong, and he lets them know it. You know what I mean? And when you also look, it's really hard to get into that. Like I love this. I'm gonna have to go look at this online, this whole theory because or perspective of the show, because when you watch DS9 and you're busy kind of looking at the Nazi comparisons or metaphors and so on, it's really hard to see Dukat in a positive light.
Especially not after you get to Waltz. Once you get there, that is the defining moment where it's like, yep, if there was any trace of good left in Dukat, it is gone now.
Wait, which one was Waltz?
The one where him and Sisko are stuck in a cave together.
Oh yeah, okay.
Towards the end.
Yeah, we don't want to spoiler Sharif.
Right, we'll just leave it at that. It's a cave episode.
The show's been off for over 30 years. It's going to be really hard to protect me from spoilers.
I don't care. We are going to try. You saw me on the chat a few weeks ago saying, no, don't say anything. Don't leave your comments.
Leave the comments.
Some things need to be discovered.
So let me know in the chats if you would serve under Sisko. And for you two, I want to know as well, Dustin and Nadia, would you serve under Sisko? I guess we have to put it in wartime because that sounds like that's where his strengths came out. Would you serve under Sisko?
I would serve under him in wartime or peacetime because he's competent. I mean, at the end of the day, we want a competent boss, and he gets it done. I mean, this is a guy who is obviously a project manager or has that background when it comes to like Utopia Planitia and things like that. So he's clearly organized enough to make so that as an employee you kind of know what's expected of you and what to do when. So I think kind of like it lowers the ambiguity and the stress level.
Well, I guess if we're going in wartime, like I had said, he is so worried about his crew. I guess I would want to, if we have to do a war, I want to serve under Sisko. Absolutely. Actually, out of all of these captains, he's the one I want to serve under the most if we're talking about wartime specifically. Otherwise, yeah, there's at least two other captains just in today's talk that I would want to serve on first.
I agree.
Yeah,
Me too.
we have a lot of most of the people in the chat are saying like yes, yes, yes to Sisko all day long. And there was a clarification from for you, Nadia, from Wilmington that was saying, gosh, okay, I can't find it, but basically he was saying that Voyager was the Federation, even though they weren't in Federation space. They like served with Federation ideals. And he's saying that DS9 was like a non-Federation space station.
Yeah, but it was a Federation run
Yeah,
space station. So
yeah,
the logic
But
doesn't.
it's owned by the Bajorans and it's governed by Bajoran law.
Except that it's Federation managed and Federation policies and laws also come into play. And this could be a whole discussion. But definitely good point. Completely.
yeah, and I get that too. Because DS9, like, you know, because I was doing my DS9 rewatch for the umpteenth time. And in watching the first episode, Kira is just like, why are these people here? Why do we have Federation people here? We just got our independence yesterday, and already we're bringing in Federation people to come and run the show. And so, in the sense that it's more of a cultural melting pot, I would say that probably makes sense for DS9 more than any other ship. Even Voyager, which Voyager supposedly is, you know, is Federation and Maquis, but really it's like 5 Maquis and like 145 Starfleet, and half the Maquis used to serve for Starfleet. So really, like, it's not a cultural melting pot. It's Federation with a few stragglers. So I could see it being a little bit of a different feel for that reason also. Okay. let's go to the next captain on the list, which is Captain Janeway. So of all the things here, where do you think her secret sauce lies? So we've got strategy, diplomacy, courage, respect for life. That's not going to be my girl. And then we've got protectiveness of the crew. So where do you think her superpowers lie?
Oh my gosh, I already know where you're at with that, Sherry.
As soon as I put it up, I was like, yeah. I mean, it's not just two Vix. There's many a time when she's just like self-destruct, or she's just like
exactly. Janeway apple pie.
There was, matter of fact, there was that episode with the I forget the name of this alien, but they had a bunch of trash that they had taken into this like other part of space, remember? And then they were like as they were heading towards the wormhole and they were going to collapse it so that the trash person was stuck and couldn't get back and couldn't keep trash in the place. They like shot torpedoes at the weakest part so that their whole ship would explode and everybody would die. And what Janeway said right before she pushed the button was time to take out the trash, and then blew them up. And it was like, oh my God. We don't have any, we don't mind that we just blew. No, we're all okay. Okay. All right. We're cool with that. Okay. And
that's the problem with analyzing the protective of their crew part of this, because yes, like she's always concerned with like keeping her number of dead down because there's only a handful of them, but at the same time she so often goes on these like suicide runs and we're going to blow up the warp core, and it just happens that like whatever shenanigans are going on in the episode means that it didn't really happen in the end. So everybody's fine, but she takes so many risks with people's lives under her command. Probably more than any other captain that we see.
Oh, yeah.
So it's every one of these is such a gray area because like she is very strategic, but also like she will not hesitate to just go full on explode a warp core in your face just because she has a grudge against you.
Yeah, because you're trying to bully her and she doesn't put up with that.
Oh yeah. When she says that she doesn't like bullies, I was like, girl, you are speaking to my soul and from my soul. But you know, Dustin, there's so much that you said there, like to unpack, and that I completely agree with. You know, I mean, on the one hand, you do tend to think about Janeway as being, you know, protective of her crew. You think about the fact that I think she truly loves her crew, you know, and she wants to, she sees them as a family. She says that she sees them as a community, you know, but you're absolutely right. She takes some of the most, she makes some of the most reckless decisions. Sorry, take the decision is French. Um, and the whole reason that they're stuck there, you know, that they, when she when she had them blow up the array, I mean, she made that decision and they all got stuck in the Delta Quadrant. So, you know, she will put her ideals above absolutely everything else, sometimes regardless of the consequences on everybody else. But she, at the same time, you know, she has faith that the crew will perform and that they can, and that things will work out and that they're going to get there. So it's, that one's a tough one. She's definitely tenacious as all get out. Like, she doesn't deviate from her goals.
I would say courage is probably one of her strong suits, along with strategy. She's unafraid of literally everything. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember a single episode where she had a hint of fear, even when she's trapped on a planet with Chakotay for potentially the rest of their lives, with Chakotay and a monkey. She's like, well, let's make the best of it. Doop, 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 doop. You know, she's not like, oh no, this could be. Actually, that's not true. She was afraid in Coda, which I love that episode. The episode where she like kept dying because that creature
Mm-hmm.
wanted to like take her soul or
Mhm.
whatever. She was afraid every time she got murdered, but like halfway through the killing spree, she was like, wait a minute, this is not even real. You know what I mean? And she was, again, she was just kind of like when she was a ghost, right? She was just like, well, dead now. You know, it just, she was fine. She was fine. The getting murdered part was kind of scary, but now she's fine. She's a ghost, fine. She's gonna haunt the crew all the way to the Alpha Quadrant. That was her choice. You know what I mean? Like she was just impenetrable in that sense of just like anything fearful or scary. So she had courage out the wazoo. I also think she had a lot of strategy, but I think it's paired to the courage. She was like, we are going to get out of this. I know. It's like she had so much confidence that she's like, one way or another, if that means we blow up everything, we blow up everything. But one way or another, we're getting out of the situation. And I'm thinking of the episode Think Tank, where the think tank
Mm-hmm.
really had them screwed. And she was like, you know, and 7 of 9 was like, well, they require me as payment so that everybody else can go free. And she was like, this is not a math equation. We're getting out of this with or without the think tank's help. Like, we're going to figure this out. And I remember being like, but how? And she never asked that question. You know what I mean? She's like, we're getting out. We're going to figure it out. So I think those are definitely her strong suits. She is not the best diplomat in the world. That is not her strong suit, but I'm okay with that because that's Picard. You know what I mean? Like, that is him. And I feel like anybody else who would try to be super diplomatic, I'd be like, you can't do it as good as Picard. You know what I mean? Like, some part of me would kind of be like, yeah, that was nice, but it could have been done better. And then respect for life, like I can't give her full marks on that one. And protective of her crew, I agree with you guys. She does love her crew like family. And I think sometimes that's why she self-destructs, you know, like she goes for that because she's like, I would rather just blow up this whole ship than have them enslaved, than have them dropped on some planet where they're going to die, that, you know, like have something else happen that I guess is not under her control. But at the same time, she risks their lives quite often. Nadia, you're totally right. She blew up the caretaker's array and was like, well, 70 years to get home. And you're like, really?
Yeah, buckle up, folks.
That was probably
Shucks.
not one of her best strategic moments. She has her moments, but that was not one of them. And so, yeah, like, I don't know. I love her. I love Janeway. And I'm going to ask the question to everybody in the chat and to you two. Would you guys serve under her? And I love Janeway, but like, I don't know. I probably wouldn't. She's a little bit unpredictable. Like, to your point, Nadia, that you said about whoever, Kirk or whatever, I feel like Janeway's she's very committed to getting the crew home. I have no doubt she's going to do that. But I also have no doubt she's going to try to blow up this ship a few more times on our way. And that stresses me out. I couldn't keep doing my job, knowing that at any minute we could just be gone.
Yeah, I think I like Janeway, and I think in a lot of ways I could serve with her, especially if we were in Federation space with you know, a support system.
Maybe Alpha Quadrant Janeway would be a little different.
Yeah. But you know, jokes aside, I think that in order to serve with Janeway and be comfortable with that, I think you have to have a certain like tolerance for ambiguity, though you could say that for the entire experience in the Delta Quadrant, you're so far away, and also uh, just you'd have to have blind faith in her because that's the only way you'd be able to live with some of these decisions that she makes. So it kind of reminds me. I don't know if y'all watch Buffy. Um, Buffy and TNG are my absolute favorite shows. I don't know if anybody in the chat does, but anyway, there's an episode basically where she's at the end of the series where she is, being cast out of her group, and without giving spoilers, and it was that same kind of thing that like you have to. She might not necessarily make these decisions that make sense, but she's going to push forward to try to get to the end, and you have to have faith in her decision making and so on. So.
Dustin, would you serve under Janeway? Did you already say that?
I was very ready to say yes at the beginning of this, but the more we've talked through Janeway, man, maybe not. And I also like Nadia's answer of like
Alpha Quadrant Janeway?
maybe in the Alpha Quadrant, but in the Delta Quadrant, like I don't know.
Blind faith.
I'm hesitant. I do not have faith of the heart when it comes to like Janeway Tuvixing me out of existence.
But it's been a long road getting from there to here.
It's a very long road getting home through the Delta Quadrant, and
man,
I think it would be very interesting to get stuck in the Delta Quadrant. But man, I don't actually know if I want to serve under Janeway under that circumstances, because she is just ready to like sacrifice everything in case of.
On her principles.
I do appreciate having a strong female captain, though, like a strong female role model. And again, like her stance on bullies, that's something that is a very I don't know. It's one of those topics that kind of always just grabs me when you start talking about people bullying and so on. Like I just can't stand it. So her reaction when she says things like that just really calls to me.
Yeah, everything that's going on in the chat is also furthering the discussion so much, and that's why I'm just putting it up and not saying it, because I could go on a tangent off literally every single one of these. Like when Grace said earlier, Janeway literally made fear afraid. Like she literally made fear afraid, which is true. Who could say that? There was also a comment earlier by I think DJ Magix, who was like, I would take my chances in the Delta Quadrant and hope I ran across Q and I could just bribe my way home, which I think is hilarious. And then PS2 Chipper with the death ratio between Janeway and Kirk. To Dustin's point, half the time it doesn't even happen in Janeway's case, but the other half the time it does happen. So I probably Kirk's is probably reset button. So Kirk's is probably higher because less reset button. There's so much timey-wimey stuff in Voyager. Although someone else said like Janeway has the most is the grittiest and has. Do you guys think that's true? Having seen DS9, do you think that Janeway is more gritty than Sisko?
Yes.
I don't know. I just I keep coming back to. Oh, I love that comment. Sorry, that totally distracted me.
Yeah, sorry. That was. Yeah,
I was so sure if I was to go to. That's hilarious because I like that you mentioned the episode Resolutions earlier where they were stuck on the planet, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily like that episode. I flipping love it. I think they had some missed opportunities there for the development of their relationship, but yeah, I just love that total shipper in that case. Now, what were we talking about before I got?
The question was grittier. Do you think the question was? Do you think that Janeway? Because there was a comment in the chat that Janeway's like the grittiest captain, the most like dirt under her nails, the most like, and I think it was in when Grace says bathtub Kathy. I think it was in response to the Year of Hell episodes where she's literally like on rations and like got her pocket watch and she's got the phaser rifle and the t-shirt, you know what I mean? And she's like ramming the ship into the time ship. And I think it's probably in reference to that of like her just like gritty, getting her hands dirty, like getting in there, doing what needs to be done. But you guys knowing Deep Space Nine so well and that Sisko was a wartime captain, do you think that Janeway is grittier than Sisko? And so Dustin had said yes.
I think that her circumstances were a lot different. Even though Sisko was in wartime, he still had the benefit of Starfleet supply chains and things like that. So I think in some ways it's comparing apples to oranges. So I
That's
will say that there's equal grit.
Yeah, Sisko was always cool, calm, and collective. Kathy has a tendency to like go off on a tangent every once in a while.
She's not always cool, calm, and collected. That's not how I
would say that about Sisko, though. Honestly, Sisko, he had a temper. Like, he would get mad. That he even exchanges that he would have with like Wayne or with Ducat, and he's just kind of gritting his teeth, and he's having a whole other discussion with them um, through the nonverbal and through like the code of the verbals coming out too. Um, I don't know. I think that he would get plenty angry, and he hated Ducat.
Wingray says if you don't betray your uniform, Sisko's okay with it.
You betrayed your uniform.
Mr. Captain says, would Sisko Tuvix Tuvix? I don't know. That's probably a good question for all the captains. Would any of the captains Tuvix other than Janeway? I don't know. Or like untuvix Tuvix?
Jonathan Archer would if he needed him in the season 3 of Enterprise. Yes.
Picard would not.
Would have gone the way of Janeway.
I'm trying to think of any of the other modern ones that might have.
Picard would not. He absolutely would not. He would say, "We got to find a way. We got to protect life." Yeah. DJ Magic says Sisko would have run Tuvix through the transporter and saved him in the buffer, then brought out Tuvok and Neelix, and then released Tuvix, which like they could have done. Like if they gave the Doctor like 3 more days, he could have figured that out. Wingray says Sisko might sacrifice them both.
Yeah, if we can't have one, we'll have none. No, somebody wrote, it's TSC Jipper, Janeway goes crazy about her coffee, and I'm like, yeah, that's another way that I can relate. Because, I mean, I don't know if y'all see that, my coffee bar behind me, but I'm for real about that kind of thing. I go nuts about my coffee,
I did notice
too.
the nice coffee maker and well-arranged cups.
Thank you. Cups that I used to get in Starbucks when I was traveling a lot.
Beautiful. Which brings us to our last captain, a captain who I admittedly know nothing about. Like, I have no context for this captain. I watched the first few episodes of the first season, and I was really annoyed by, what's her name, T'Pol or T'Pon? T'Pol?
Yeah,
T'Pol.
I was very annoyed by T'Pol, and I just was annoyed. I was just so annoyed, I just stopped watching. So I don't remember anything about this captain. And this is on the rewatch list, but I'm going to do it in order, so it's going to be a hot minute. So this is definitely for you guys. How would you rate Captain Archer on his, his strategy, his diplomacy, his courage, respect for life, protectiveness of the crew? Where does he really shine?
Well, he's not super strategic. He's not super courageous. He wants to be diplomatic, but he's only okay at it. He is very respectful of life. He's always trying to like be aware of his circumstances and privilege versus the other people that he's dealing with, because some of them are vastly more superior in technology and some are not at all. He does a pretty good job with that. Protective of crew. Depends on the time. Because, I mean, season 3, like, yeah, he loses a lot of crew. Yeah.
Nadia?
I agree with a lot of what you said. I mean, certainly he does lack in strategy and diplomacy, but he is, in fairness, no other captain had gone out that far. No other captain had met as many or has had experienced so many new situations and things like that. So I think he was blazing the trail and also kind of trying to find his feet as a human captain of a mostly human crew going out into the galaxy for the first time for real. So I definitely think that out of all of that, all of the what's the word? Characteristics. Sorry, it's getting late, so my brain is getting weird and confusing languages. But I find that the characteristics there, he is probably courageous. I mean, that's where I disagreed with you a little bit, Dustin. I find that he was actually pretty brave. And I think you kind of really have to be to go out into the unknown like that, where there's, no infrastructure to help you. Janeway experienced that as well. And I think he was pretty protective of his crew. Like when Malcolm, who's a really annoying character, but when he's out there on the hull of the ship trying to like dislodge a mine or something, and he ends up getting a rod or something or a spike that goes through his legs. Of all people that could have gone out there, like other armory officers, to get Malcolm disconnected. No, the captain needs to go. And he's the one who went to try to save him. So yeah, I think probably courageous is the first thing for him, and then protective of his crew.
When Grace
when
says, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that when Grace says Archer's greatest skill is using the word eager, which I thought was fun. But also to your point, Nadia, Chris says that he had no prime directive to guide his decisions. Now, let's be clear. None of them cared about the prime directive. Let's just be clear. So that
depends on the day of the week.
That would probably make zero difference to any captain. However, I think that totally aligns with what Nadia was saying about they're blazing a trail. There's no guidance to follow.
He's writing the rule book as they go.
Yes. They can't be like, oh, well, Kirk dealt with this before. We'll just copy paste what he did in our episode. You know what I mean? Like they have to figure it all out from scratch, which is a very different thing. And similar to Janeway in the sense that she's in the Delta Quadrant and it's a different quadrant, but very different because she has all of Federation history and knowledge base. She's got the Doctor, she's got Neelix and Kes helping with local lore, and their whole mission is to get home. They explore on their way because they can't help themselves, but their mission is to get home versus this mission is exploration. Like all the other ships, it's just explore, but it's explore as like the first, which has got to be really terrifying.
I just wanted to clarify what I was saying about courageous. Versus the other captains on the list, I think he might be the least courageous. I mean, yes, every major captain, there's some courage involved there. But I guess what I'm thinking about specifically is early on, like there's this trope of like every time they get in trouble, it happens 4 times in season 1 and 2 where they run to a Vulcan ship for help. So courageous, yes, I mean, but he also like gets in over his head. So it's just, if I'm comparing the 5 captains we're talking about today, he's probably the least courageous for me.
But I don't know though, is that a lack of courage, or is that a, like, I don't know if you want to call it common, but like let's say a judgment call, a judgment call to ensure the safety of his crew, because that's his number one job basically, is to ensure that the people under his care are safe. So I don't know. I don't necessarily see that as a lack of bravery. There was at one point in the beginning and like the first season where he was like, okay, turn the ship around. We're going back. We're going to get some better weapons and things like that, because we left space dock early and they were just getting pounded on too much. So that is like, I didn't necessarily, I remember watching that and thinking, it's disappointing, but at the same time, I can kind of see where he's coming from, I don't know what you guys think about that.
We have a lot I have no opinions, but
I think what you said's fair.
I have no opinion on this, but in the comments, we have a lot going on. There's some I love / I hate about the fact that he brought the dog into the dangerous unknown. I mean, maybe he couldn't find a dog sitter. I'm more okay with bringing the dog to the dangerous unknown than I am with bringing the kids
the children,
on the Enterprise D. That doesn't make any good sense to me at all. Like, there's no fun. Either don't have the kids on there or don't send the ship into the most dangerous battles immediately and first before everybody else. Like, pick a lane.
That's the part that I've never agreed with you on, though, because you and Andrea both kind of went in that direction. But for me personally, I'm like, well, I don't know, because if you want to get the best out of your employees and you want them, like your crew, you need them focused and things like that. You have to care about like all elements of them. And yeah, they were a military organization. I don't know why Picard said no, but I think you're going so far away from your home. You kind of, I don't know, it's hard to tell people who have families to leave them behind.
Yeah, but that's the military, right? And when you deploy, sometimes they take their kids with them on base, but you don't take your kids with you in your military vehicles. Like you don't put them in the tank, you don't put them in the ship, you don't put them in unless they're like on dock, like working on the ship, something like that. But if it's like we're going out, they're like, get the family off because you're putting them in harm's way. And the other thing too that's different between like TNG versus Voyager is that they can go home anytime. And obviously, like, this is their job, and their job is to be away from their families for a long AF time. So I'm not saying that's easy, but they can take shore leave, they can leave, they can go home, unlike the crew of Voyager, which is just SOL, right? Like, they don't get to, kids or no kids, you don't get to see anybody ever again, as far as you know? So I just feel like, as far as putting them in harm's way, it'd be like a firefighter who takes their kids to work. And it's like all fun to be in the fire engine and like slide down the pole, and like, I'm cool with that. But they should not be in that truck. And if they're in that truck, they shouldn't be in front of that fire. If they're in that fire, like, don't put them in harm's way. That's the thing. And I don't even have kids. I know you do, Nadia, and I think you do also, Dustin. But like, I do. I work so much with kids, and I get so mama bear, and I'm just like, I would never. Like, I just would never. I would never put them in harm's way, knowingly. Just like, I don't know. It's crazy to me.
I think that you have fair points, except that the only thing is, I mean, I wouldn't be putting a kid on the Defiant. It's a ship that is made for combat, but the Enterprise's mission, it wasn't meant for war. It was meant to be able to defend itself, to defend others, but that wasn't the whole point of that ship. So I don't see, having kids on a tank or having kids on an Enterprise in the same way that I would see having kids on a tank. I would compare that more to the Defiant.
I think that's fair. But we also talked about how Beverly left her kid on the ship.
Yeah.
And then went back to Starfleet, which by that same logic would be fine. But it bothers me for the same reason that it bothered me if she was there. Because I'm like,
ain't no way. I don't care how advanced my child is. Ain't no way he's going to be on the other flipping side of the quadrant from me. Nope.
Wellington says maybe we need to define courageous as just hecka reckless. And that, yeah. I think if we did that, Janeway would still win for the most courageous.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Go ahead. So Wingrace says, I think we might feel better about Archer if we actually saw his missions first instead of after all the better people in the universe learn from him. Yeah, it's really hard to do a prequel. And I feel like maybe, I mean, you can't blame that on Archer, and you can't blame that on the Enterprise. You have to blame that on like the writers who were like, I know, we'll do a prequel. Because that was the same trouble that Discovery ran into, where they're like, I know, we'll do a prequel, but we'll change everything. And everybody's mad because it doesn't line up. Okay, we'll change it back. Okay, well, it's just like, maybe go forward. But I understand the desire to say, like, where did it all start? But it's hard to do in a sci-fi way, because especially like Discovery is a perfect example, because the technology and stuff, the CGI, all of that is 1,000 times better. So it's like impossible to make a show that looks like it was made before TOS. It's just impossible. It's so like everything they do is just so far and beyond. All the technology they have is so far and beyond. And so you're like, well, if they had that then, why didn't they have it in TOS? I feel like the prequels can sometimes paint us into a corner when we're doing futuristic sci-fi-y things. Because now you're thinking, what's in the future, but not the far future, but before the future. It's like, I don't know. So would you guys serve under Archer?
No.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, just no.
No.
I don't have a lot of reasoning. Just no. And I love Scott Bakula as an actor, but no.
I don't know. I mean, compared to the others, definitely there are others that are more appealing to me. But I think that the mission's interesting, if you join up because you want to explore, you want to see the unknown and things like that. I mean, his mission is really interesting, and his heart is in the right place, so I guess you have to have your blind faith of the heart to get through that too.
No one's gonna bend or break me.
Yeah, I know nothing about this captain, so I can't say him specifically, but I can tell you that I am not an early adopter of technology. So I wouldn't be the first on. I wouldn't be the very first ship to go out. I know that. I know that for sure.
That is a very good point.
There's like this bell curve when it comes to adapting new technology. So there's like the early adapters who like always want the newest, latest iTunes or whatever. Then there's most people, which are in the middle of the curve. And then there's those people who are still using a flip phone to this day. And you're like, bruh, where'd you even find that phone? Right. So like, I'm not these people way over here who like only adapt when there's no other option, but I'm solidly in the bell curve. So when it comes to the space exploration, this like casual space exploration, off with the Vulcans and Klingons and stuff, I'm good. I'd wait quite a while on that. With the transporters, I would wait on that. The replicators, I would absolutely use, but that's because we practically have replicator technology today. So it's not really that far away. We have 3D printers that can 3D print food and stuff. So like,
they can do food now?
Yes, they can do food. I don't know if it tastes food, but like it's food. It's edible. It's got food components.
Food-like content.
If you look at cheese puffs say it has cheese-like substance in it. So, and I like it.
I got you. I got you.
So, I mean, replicators, 3D printers is going to be even more food-like product in it than that. So, I would totally try that. I would totally try holodeck. But any like messing with my molecules, shooting me into space, any of that, like, nah. I wouldn't be the first. I wouldn't be the second. Like, I would need that to be tested and tried. I would need to see people are not coming out inside out. It would be a hot minute before.
Did you ever see that movie Timeline? Way back in like the early 2000s with Gerard Butler, where people. Pardon?
Was there a cave in it? Where they were like chasing each other through a cave? Because then maybe.
No, it takes place in like medieval France or something like that. But basically, you have people. It was Paul Walker and Gerard Butler and a bunch of people, and they basically go back in time through this invention. But the thing is, one of the issues that they found was that the more often people would like go back and forth between, the past and the present, it was like making a photocopy of a copy. So eventually they weren't being put together right, and they start seeing breaks in like the DNA and things in cellular structure and things like that. So that's when you started talking about transporter technology, like that's the exact same thing that I think of. I think I would adopt a lot of the technology. I think I would be a heck of a shuttle pilot to get myself around, kind of be like Pulaski in that way. But a lot of other somebodies would have to use the transporters a lot of times before I get on that. But that being said, having been a person who's had to sit in comfortable airplanes for like 15 hours at a time, I can tell you that when I'm stuck there and I can't sleep and I'm squished and things like that, I have wished more than once that I lived in Star Trek times and could use transporter technology to get around the world.
That's fair. Being stuck in traffic in LA, I have wished for transporter technology, or flying cars or something. But I see the photocopy thing, and then the thing with the photocopy thing is you'd have to know like how many times do people need to go back and forth before they pick up on the fact that they're photocopying and their DNAs. So like that's what I'm saying. We need all of that done. We need all of that figured out before I want to do it. I want all of that research established and solved. So I'm not doing Model 1. I'm not doing Model 2. Catch me at Model 5. Like do some preliminaries with all the brave people. So, okay, so with everybody on this list, this is just part 1, people. We have a whole part 2 with all the other captains we didn't mention today coming next week. But for part 1 of everybody on this list, who would you most want to serve under?
Can I actually side note this?
Yes.
For next week, who are you thinking about for the captain for Picard? Is it Rios? Is it Shaw? Or is it Picard again?
It's going to be Rios. At first I put Picard, and then I was like, wait, no?
He's only captain in the very end of season 3 for 2 episodes.
Yeah, like my first thing was Picard, and I had a whole thing of all the captains, and that was one of them. And then when I was thinking about it like the other day, I was like, wait, no, it's Rios. Because even Shaw, who is the captain in season 3 or whatever, Shaw gets to be the captain for like 1.5
10 minutes.
seasons. Season 2, they're not really in the ship. So I'm just going to call it him. I'm going to say he's the captain. And same thing for Discovery. It's just going to be Burnham. It's not going to be Georgiou. And yeah, it's not going to be all the other captains that were captain. It's just going to be Burnham. Yeah, or 7. It's not going to be 7. We got a lot of options.
So
We're
yeah.
just going to pick one.
So who's the best? Who am I serving under?
Who are you serving under?
Picard. I mean, yeah, but Picard hands down, and then probably Kirk for a generality after that, and then like we've said, it's gray areas after that. Sisko and more time. Janeway, if we're in the Alpha Quadrant, and probably not Archer, just out of the 5. Like, yeah, for a lot of the reasons you said, Charisse, like it's just too new. I'm not going on that first NXO one. Heck no.
Give me like some letters at the end. Go on the B.
Get it completely out of the NXs. Completely
out of the NXs. Completely. What about you, Nadia?
Do I even need to answer the question? I mean, come on. No, I would choose Picard to serve under. They would have to change the fraternization policy, but if they didn't, then I would have to take the position of first lady or whatever. I'm a great event organizer. I can, plan his diplomatic whatever, as long as I get to share quarters with him.
Maybe you could be his assistant. Captain Freeman, I think, is the only captain who has a legit assistant who like walks around with an iPad and makes sure that she's like on task for all of her duties.
No, it would be like Kirk and his yeoman Janice Rand, I think it was.
Rand.
Like that. Yeah. Yep. And which their whole thing was kind of uncomfortable, So no, I couldn't be his like assistant, but I could be his partner.
I love it. So Chazzy says transporters are safe because of the Heisenberg compensators. I'm not going to take your word for that. I'm going to wait till we're out of the NXs and going to skip the A.
Too many chronotons involved.
I'm going to skip the A, catch me on the B. We're gonna skip just like one more just to totally make sure we got a new ship class. We're just going to make sure that all of those kinks are worked out. Like, yeah. I think I'd be serving long before the D, but it starts with 01? No, not getting on that. It's like, so I definitely, I really like, Dustin, how you like layered your answers. Since I don't know, I don't know a ton about Kirk as a leader. So this is a really hard one for me because I don't have a clear picture of every single captain. And I know nothing of Archer, but I wouldn't serve under him anyways, just because it's new. I would say Picard for sure. I would serve under any and every day. I think he's most likely to keep me alive. And I think the other, and maybe Alpha Quadrant Janeway. Like, I definitely couldn't do Delta Quadrant Janeway. Like, I could go for drinks with her for sure, but I could not serve under her. Not just because of how like reckless she is with the ship and stuff like that, but also kind of like the Tuvix episode. I'd have a lot of problems with that. And I would have a lot, it'd be like, why are we not trusting the doctor to find a better solution? And I don't think I would be okay with decisions like that over and over and over and over. And also somebody said in the chat that they didn't appreciate the way Janeway kept denying the doctor's personhood. And I agree with that as well. To be fair, that was inconsistently written because sometimes she was like, yay, the doctor. And sometimes she was like, it's just a tool. It's like a toaster, and you're like, which one is it? But like overall, like all of the times when she was like, the doctor's not a real person and who cares what he thinks, was very just like, this is the person in charge of your life. Like, this person is saving lives. This person does brain surgery. Put some respect on it. You know what I mean? Like, can you do that? No. And that also makes me feel like just some uncomfortable choices. And then with the array, Sisko was totally had so many valid points of like, what are you doing? We're trying to get home. Why are you stopping and exploring every single star? And so I think I would just have a lot of Delta Quadrant issues. Like, I don't know if I'd be able to serve her in full confidence. I guess I would have no choice, but I would be like kind of looking for Q also probably.
I think that you make a lot of really good points. And I think serving under Janeway, I would probably be more comfortable like if I was if I were single and had no children and like nobody like depending on me, if
No
I
one to miss you, is
was
that
a
what you're
little
saying?
younger, pardon,
No one to miss you if you didn't come home, is that
Signed
what
a
you're saying?
waiver.
and just like, and no one who would be holding me back in terms of my decision making because I, and in terms of just my ability to kind of adjust to that situation because um, I would just be feeling so torn and missing everybody. So yeah, I think that would be a little rough.
And literally everyone in the comments said Sisko. Like literally everyone was like Sisko et al. Others after Sisko.
Speaking of the comments, can I just throw out a colon for a joke that I started in your comment section a couple months ago, and now you have made a real thing where people can do a colon,
yes.
colon,
if you are
and a
part
colon
of,
appears.
if you are part of the Savage Stream membership, you can drop a colon in the comments and see a cute little colon. Thanks to Dustin's innovative thoughts. Peter says, I like how the NX-01 developed the early protocols such as red alert, klaxons, and shields. When the ship sensors detected an anomaly. Nice. We got Borg colon. Yes. So there's a lot of benefits, Peter, of the like early technology developing all the things. Like that's very cool. I think Nadia said this about Kirk. She said he's so fun to watch on screen, but I wouldn't want to be on a ship. I think that's kind of the same thing here. Like, it's so interesting to hear about the backstory, but I don't want to be in the backstory. Like it's like, oh, how interesting. This is how it all started. This is where red alerts came from. Oh, this is how we learned if we eat that, we die. How interesting. But like, I don't want to learn it. It's just more like, let's learn from their mistakes kind of a thing for me. But like I said, I haven't really seen Enterprise. So like, I can't say how much I love or don't love that show and the way that they explore those stories.
Yes, can I just interject and say that, like, I think that that's one of the reasons why Enterprise isn't necessarily as beloved a show as some of the others, simply because there's so many missed opportunities. Like, had they focused more on, the run up to the formation of Federation, and more on those like what Peter was saying, the development of the early protocols and like why certain things were put into place. I think that the show probably would have gotten us hooked a little bit more because that's what everyone seems to appreciate the most, So there's a lot of missed opportunities, I think, in the series because of that.
I just feel like Enterprise it's TNG that didn't get the time to develop. Because, I mean, seasons 3 and 4 for me are quite good. Seasons 1 and 2 kind of suck. Same thing with TNG. If I based, like, having more Star Trek off the first 2 seasons of TNG, well, it wouldn't cut it. I mean, they have a couple of good episodes, same with Enterprise, but, I mean, it was just hitting its stride when it got canceled, so it's too bad.
Yeah, so to your point, and I've heard you say that before, Dustin, if they had 3 more seasons, maybe they would have explored more things because maybe they would have had more interesting stories already that are in play and more dynamic characters, and then more feedback from the fans.
It very much is, because the next season was both planned and the years always lined up with it's the Romulan War that they talk about a little bit in TOS. So that would have been a big thing.
And then we have in the comments, yeah, Randall, Carrie was, I forget if Carrie was Carrie the next engineer in line? I don't remember.
Well, he was the choice.
He was the one that
other than B'Elanna to begin with.
Yeah, he was the one B'Elanna punched in the face. So yes, he was going to be the next chief engineer. And then Wellington says the Enterprise suffered from inconsistent writing, focus on vision, and the trying to turn T'Pol into 7 of 9.
So true. I mean, a Vulcan in a cat suit, like,
where have I seen this before?
And we get that, like, the Vulcan girl trope in every one of the new Treks. We have like a Vulcan girl who shows up in every single one of the new Treks. Wait, I'm not sure if that's true of Picard, because Picard was a little all over the place. But it's definitely true of Lower Decks. It's definitely true of Prodigy. Oh, I don't even know Strange New Worlds, actually. So I must take that back. I have to take that back until I finish watching Strange New Worlds because I'm not even sure. Oh, yeah. And then PS2 Chipper did say I missed Captain Nog. I did not because I have not gotten to that point. And you said Captain Nog from Star Trek Online. And you know, PS2 Chipper, I don't play Star Trek Online. So you are the keeper of the lore of what happens after the show is finished, because apparently it's all answered in Star Trek Online. Everything you want to know is put into Star Trek Online, which I love.
A lot of it is.
And
It's incredible how much stuff's in it.
The spoilers, of DS9. I thought you were going to say spoilers of Enterprise. Okay, so, and then Mr. Captain says Carbon Creek was a great episode. Enterprise needed more writing like that.
If you watch any episode, just watch Carbon Creek. You don't need to see any other part of the show to watch that one. It's so good.
Well, that's helpful too. That's where I'll start then, whenever I get to Enterprise. Okay, so I want to say a huge thank you to my special guests, Dustin and Nadia. Do either of you want to plug anything before we wrap up?
I'm doing a thing about Space Jesus in Star Trek that'll be out tomorrow. And thank you for having me, Charisse. This has been fun. I love doing a thing where I don't have to host it. This has been great.
I just like getting a chance to see y'all and interact verbally instead of like completely taking over the chat, which I'm really sorry, you guys. If you can tell, I'm very loquacious, even when I write. Nothing
Please
really.
don't apologize. Please don't ever apologize. You're the best thing in the chat next to everybody else in the chat because you keep the conversation going. Like, this is why, people are in there talking. That's what makes it fun. Let me tell you, when it was just me and PS2 Chipper, okay? There was nobody saying anything else in the chat. And it was just like, so I guess my live streams were like 15 minutes long because it was like, nobody wanted to talk to me. Sorry, I cut you off. Please continue.
No. Well, it's completely relevant what you're saying because I feel like we have such a nice group in the chat that like shows up every week and things like that. So, I feel like I get to like either I get to chat with my my buddies every Wednesday night and stuff. So it was nice to actually do that kind of like verbally today. So thank you so much for having me. I don't really have anything to plug. Like my little tagline there says, I'm just a big fan.
So for Dustin's Space Jesus thing that's coming out tomorrow, it's going to be on the YouTube channel Best of Trek with Dustin. Is that the new name?
Just my name in parentheses. It's just Best of Trek now, basically.
Best of Trek. Best of Trek. But if you do type in Best of Trek, Worst of Trek, all his stuff's still going to come up. Thank you, PS2 Chipper. This is like just in memory of our times together, just you and I in the chat.
Like and subscribe.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Oh, I love this. Wellington says, I'm new to the podcast. I'm nearly ending season 3 of the TNG podcast, which is the podcast I hosted with one of my best friends. And it says, I'm kind of loving the lockdown vibes. We were in lockdown. I'm glad you could sense that. That in the podcast, we're like, actually, my co-host is an extrovert. So her not being around people, she was climbing the walls. And I'm an introvert. So I was like, something's changed. What's different? I had so much energy being home all the time. And I didn't have to like make excuses for why I felt too uncomfortable to go to parties. It was like, there are no parties. COVID people, it was great. It was like, no parties. Oh, okay. Meet you on Zoom. I mean, it was like,
what a shame. I get to stay home today and tomorrow and the next day. I'm a homebody too.
Yeah. So for my little heart, I mean, it was a terrifying time, but just like for me, not, and then also we were working with little kids at the time. So working with the kids on screen was like really fun for me. Not as good for them, but really fun for me. And then seeing them in person, they were like, wow, you're so much bigger because on Zoom, you all look the same height.
Exactly.
The same spot. So when I met my little fifth graders in person, they were like, wow, Miss Charisse, you're so tall.
I get that all the time. People always get shocked when they actually meet me and they see, because I'm relatively tall, like I'm 5'9", so people are always like, what? I mean, it's not 6 foot or anything, but still,
It's almost 6 foot. Like,
well, when I start busting out the heels and stuff like that.
Let me tell you, in heels, I'd be 5'7". So, okay. So DJ Magic, can we petition to add 7 as she took over the captain's chair 3 times? I would say yes, except for I already like planned it. So Maybe we'll make an honorable mention. Okay, so thank you so much for coming live. Thank you for coming on the replay. Dustin, Natty, I'm going to ask you to stick around for just a few more minutes while I end the stream. So if you like this conversation, come back next week for part 2, where we're going to talk about all the captains we didn't talk about today. Not the ones from the movies, but all the ones for the show. Thank you so much, and I will see you next. Are you thinking about starting a podcast? If so, I've got great news for you. For a limited time, I am hosting a free on-demand workshop called Podcasting Made Easy. It's geared towards helping business owners and creatives start a brand building podcast. Inside, I will share with you my 5-part framework, some major myths to avoid, and this is going to save you so much time, why you don't need to be a world-class speaker or have a huge audience to get started, and so much more. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code to watch the training today.